Welcome to Monster Monday. Last night I got to revisit what I could have seen as potentially being my favorite film of 2018 when I first watched it, and was really curious to go back and rewatch it last night. And after rewatching it, it is, definitely one of the best films of 2018. I still stick by this. I watched this at midnight, like when it came out. I didn't know what the hell it was. I just so happened to be on Netflix around that time, like I usually am. The Ritual popped up, and I was like, what's this? Press play, and was absolutely captivated for 96 minutes, I think. I think it's like an hour and 36 minutes, something like that. It just floored. I loved every damn second of this film. It reminded me of what I always wanted the Blair Witch to be. When I watched the first Blair Witch, it was like leading and building and building and building up to this thing. And then the end happened. And although I do still really enjoy the Blair Witch and all three of the films in the franchise, this was that film that gave me that ending that I was like, oh shit, here it is. This is that perfect survival in the woods creature feature. It's amazing. This is from the director of Southbound and one of the VHS segments, David Bruckner. And he also did The Signal as well. And something I did not know, but I saw on this watch, was that Andy Serkis himself was the executive producer here. Maybe he played the monster. You never know. But guys, just for some reason, if you have not yet seen The Ritual, I am doing my year-end list tomorrow and expect this to be very, very high up there on my podcast. I highly recommend shutting this off and going and watching this right now. Please do yourself a favor. This is one of the best films of 2018. Not horror, films, period. So, all right. So, getting into spoilers on the film. So, we have a group of friends here, and they're all deciding on what they're going to do for their next big get-together, and one of the friends suggests that they go to Sweden to go on a hike, and they're all kind of like, yeah, whatever. And so Luke, being the drunk asshole that he is, decides that the party isn't over, and he needs to go into this liquor store. And, they go in there and they see this woman who's been beaten behind the counter, and these guys run out. Now, here's the thing. It's, when you watch this film, you can take things however you want to take things. You can be like, this guy should have stuck up for his friend. You can relate to him. But I have to look at the friend, because I think we're all focusing so much on Luke's decision that we don't really focus too much on his friend's decision. His friend makes some stupid ass decisions here, in my opinion. And I feel like he's the freaking these junkies or whatever, which is exactly what they're labeled. If you listen to the subtitles, it calls them junkies. So it's ultimately their fault, of course. They're the assholes here. But if you're going to demonize Luke, you need to also put as much blame on the other guy. He does two things that get him killed. Number one, he should have went with Luke when Luke freaking, snuck around the side. But he froze, just like Luke did. This is why I'm saying, if you're going to give shit to Luke for freezing, then you need to give this guy shit, because they both froze. The next thing that the friend does here is he won't give up his ring. If anyone's ever holding you hostage or putting a gun to your head or anything, and they want what you have, give it to them. There is nothing outside of your child, of course, or something like that, outside of a human being. But there's no possession that's worth your life. Nothing. Not a wedding ring, nothing. I know he's trying to say this is my wife's ring, whatever. Get it. He's in love, this and that. You get a new ring. You can't get a new life. So for me, a lot, because I've listened to a lot of different podcasts, and they've talked about this film. And there will be people like, oh, well, he was a pussy, or he was not a pussy. Bullshit. A lot of us would do that. I would say 90+% of people wouldn't do shit. They would do exactly what he did. And he grabbed a bottle. He was going to go out, but things were happening so fast, man. That happened quick. If you're really paying attention to the scene and you really look at the timestamp, the whole when the guys come out and see him to where he's hitting the head, it's 30 seconds at best. It's fast. And when you're in that moment and your heart's racing and this and that, and you grab the bottle and he hesitates. That's more of anything. More though so than freezing. It's not like he grabbed the bottle and then he sat there and he froze and he couldn't move and he was so paralyzed by fear. Like, he grabs the bottle and he hesitates for like a split second and his friend gets bashed over the head. And by that point, I mean, he's on the ground, and yeah, maybe some people would jump up, some wouldn't. And I don't feel like it's his fault. I feel like it's the junkie's fault first and foremost, of course. But as much blame as I put on Luke is as much blame as I put on the friend. I wrote the friend's name down here. They only say it a couple times in the movie. Can't really remember. He's obviously not a very big character. But I guess technically his character becomes a big theme throughout the film. But he's obviously not in it all that much. But I don't know. I just, that's the first thing I definitely wanted to address here, because I just feel like Luke gets a raw deal in this. We freeze. You never know how you're going to react in these kinds of situations. Everyone wants to believe they would for sure be the hero and they'd save the day. But would you? I've said this on my channel many times. Would you? Would you really for sure? I mean, unless you've already done it and you could be like, dude, I was in that situation and I did do something. Okay, fine. But this guy knew he meant business. I think that also adds to it, is that they see the cashier already beaten pretty horribly. So this Luke knows they mean business. These guys are not just talk. And he freezes. He looks at the bottle. He has it in his hand. So it's not like he just goes, fuck my friend. He does grab a bottle and he thinks about it. But the friend should not, if he would have just given him the ring, he would have lived. They would have left him alone, because they left the cashier alive. They never knew that guy was around the corner, but they knew the cashier was there, and they did not kill her. So these guys were just, they were not going to be told no. Should never have said that. So, okay, I've beaten that enough, but bad pun. But it's just, no. But the guilt is real, 100%. I completely understand why Luke thinks this, because that's how I would be. Especially if I froze, I would be so hard on myself. I would be like, how the fuck could you freeze? Your friend needed you, this and that. But then there'd be the other voice in my head that would be like, well, he should have came and hid with me when he did. He froze as well, I get that. And he should have given him the fucking ring. So I would justify it in my head. But, oh man, the guilt he feels in this, and the way that it's done too, the way that it's addressed, like it's a slow buildup where the friends haven't really said anything yet, but it's always lingering. You can just feel it. And it's in the acting, it's in the directing, it's in that, it's unsaid, but you can feel it from the actors. You can feel it from Luke, and you can feel it from Hutch and Phil and Dom, like all these characters. It's like almost on the tip of their tongue at all times. And you can almost feel it on Luke, that he feels like it's on the tip of their tongue, because as soon as him and Hutch get into that conversation, he like immediately it's like, hey, what do you think? What do you, I love that. I love that about it, because that's how people would be. There's even though this obviously, gets into the unrealistic aspects with monsters and whatnot, there's such a realism to this. And that's what makes a great movie for me. I don't care how fantastical a film gets. You can go other worlds, you can go alternate dimensions, you can go creatures, monsters, things that never existed, fantastical beings. My camera just cut out there for absolutely no reason, but I'm not starting this over. I like one takes, but whatever. The hell. But yeah, people are people. So there you go. All right, let's move on. So another huge fear of mine, I bring up fears on this channel a lot, but being lost in the woods, especially injured, when they're out there and they're, putting their friend's ashes and almost fulfilling his last wish, which really isn't his last wish, but it is the last thing he said to them. So they honor what his idea was to go out there and hike in Sweden. And they, put him out. I don't know why they had to go out so fucking far, since all of them didn't seem to be all that interested in it. I would have went out like an hour and then came back. I don't know why they had to go like 2 days out. That's crazy. But I don't think they could get back in one day. From what it seemed like the path they had to take. It was going to take at least 2 days to get back. That's a long ass hike. But yeah, like that I have no interest in that. Like, I'm that person that's like, we got out of, like, human beings camped for thousands of years. Like, we got past that. We don't need to camp anymore. So I want to sleep in a bed. I want to sleep at home. You can call me a pussy. You can call me, soft prima donna, whatever you want. I don't care. I don't want to sleep out in the woods. I just don't. That has no appeal to me. So being lost in the woods is just terrifying to me. I hate being lost at all. Like, when I'm driving, even if I have fucking Siri in my lap and she can give me the directions. But pre-Siri days, GPS and whatnot, when I was driving around and I didn't know where I was and I'd taken a wrong turn or whatever, when someone gave me directions on the phone and I tried to write them down. Oh God, remember those days? Awful shit. But yeah, you would just go out and I would get lost, and it was like, you're going to get home. You're not that lost when you're in a car and you're on highways and you're all this and that. You can call and figure out where the hell you're at, but I still hate that feeling. But imagine being out in the woods and not knowing what direction is which, and being like, well, I could walk that way for 6 hours and find nothing. I could walk that way for days and find nothing, because if you're going in the wrong direction, there's nothing out there. That's like Alaska or something, where it's just thousands of miles of forest. Ugh, just terrifying thought to me. And these guys getting out there, and one of them getting injured, having an injury too in that situation, and not being able to properly walk, you just think like, oh my God, I'm going to die of exposure out here. So that alone, this is one of those things where it's like, it's kind of like The Descent. When you talk about The Descent, it's a movie where the monsters don't even need to be in it, and the movie's terrifying. This is another one of those things where these guys, the guy gets his leg hurt and they're trying to get back through the woods and they can't find them, the way, and they find this house and it's creepy and all this. You don't even need the monster, and this movie's already scary. You throw the monster in there as well, and it just amplifies how terrifying it all is. So they decide to take this shortcut. Big mistake, right? Of course. It sounds like a good plan. I get it. You just cut straight. You follow the compass. You keep heading north. You'll get it. Whatever which way it was. I think it doesn't matter which direction it was. But when they go in, I'm curious on this VW bus. I'm curious on what the story is behind this bus that's parked right at the edge of the forest. Because the forest, or the woods, or whatever you want to call it, is this creature's domain. Like, I don't know. We'll get into the whole ending, and I'm not sure which way you want to take this, how he can or can't do this or that. I don't know. But I don't know. Maybe some of the people that are there, that's their bus, and that's, they parked it there, or were they taken from that area? Like, who the hell took a freaking VW bus out there? But at the same time, I don't know. Like, somebody says something about the bus, the VW bus, and it has some little story behind it. And I know that he can trick your eyes into seeing stuff. So is that bus even really there? I think it is. But I don't know. For some reason, when I saw it this time, I was like, wonder what the story of that bus is. There's got to be some significance to it, because it's so randomly there. Like, there's nothing else like it in the entire film. They don't really see anything else like it. I don't know. So, I don't know. What do you guys think about that VW bus? And when they first see the animal, now, shout out to Teddy Brown, who's a huge Predator fan, much like myself. This film has a lot of, Predator in it for me. This feels like Blair Witch meets the Predator, meets some other things. when they see this freaking thing up in the tree. It's like Hopper's men. When they find it, and I love the subtlety of this film. This film is never heavy-handed. It's very subtle, it's creepy, it's eerie, the tension is thick, and they do it in clever ways. Like, no one has to announce to you that this thing was obviously hung up very recently. They show them their reaction to it, they look at it, they decide to walk away, the camera pans down, and the blood is still dripping from the foot, reminding the audience, or telling the audience, that this happened very recently, like within minutes, maybe hours at best. So this is a very recent kill that was just strung up on their path. I love that stuff. As I said, no one had to be like, look, it's still dripping blood. There's none of that. And it just, when I saw that, I was like, that's cool stuff, man. Then they find that creepy ass house. This is total Blair Witch shit right here. They find the house at the end of the Blair Witch, but they find the house like, halfway into this movie? And then for everything from there. But the whole house sequence is phenomenal. I love every single second in that house. I love every single second of this film, but the house stuff is really genuinely creepy. And it could have went any which way it wanted to from there. At that point, we hadn't even established some freaking creature out in the woods or anything. He keeps hearing things. It could have been anything. It could have been cult leaders. It could have been spirits. It could have been whatever. And they get in there. The guy goes upstairs. He sees this freaking like idol made out of what? Straw? It's creepy as hell. They go downstairs. They go to sleep. And this is when we fall into a dream sequence. And this film does dream sequences right. I bitch on my channel all the time about how much I hate dream sequences. I think they're total cop-out bullshit. But this, it's interwoven into the narrative in a very clever, creepy, and effective way. So it's warranted. The other dream fake-outs that I'm bitching about, they're fake outs for scares only. It's a take back. It's a, here's everything. Oh my God, something crazy happened. Just kidding. We did it just to fuck with you. It doesn't actually play into the story at all. It's just a total fucking cop out. I can't stand that stuff. But this, and it's cool too because it blends reality and dreams into itself. That's what's so cool about this film. His first dream, he goes in, he sees, the liquor store, and I just love that the liquor store is like organically interwoven into the landscape of where they're at. So it's not just like he goes into the liquor store. No, they bring the liquor store and they mash them together with the wood setting. So the ground is all dirt, there's trees and there's vines and stuff, and it's still the liquor store. It's very nightmarish, it's very atmospheric, and it works perfectly because it services the story. What's happening in that moment, from what I can tell, is the Jotan, or Jutan? I can't remember what the monster is called. But he's searching their feelings. And Luke is the only one with a true tragedy. He's the only one who's completely miserable, has a tragic past. He goes through the other ones, and he doesn't find that. And he marks Luke as one of the people, because that's what he does. He needs these people to worship him, and he takes their pain away. So he wants to be worshipped as a god. Luke has all this pain inside of him. And so he's marking him, and he's going to bring him in. He's going to lure him in by taking away this misery inside of him. His friends don't have that, so he can't get them. So he's just going to pick them off one by one. He's done with them. They don't qualify for his worship. And that scene where they wake up and they're in the freaking house, and one of them's out, he's outside. He comes in, freaking Hutch has pissed himself, And Dom is freaking the fuck out. He says he saw something horrible. We later find out that's what is going to become true. And Phil is upstairs in the attic or whatever that is, praying naked in front of this idol. And just their reactions to it. It's very realistic. It's very manly. Like, they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to freaking, admit to things. But they know they need to focus and they need to get the fuck out of there. And so they do. They get their shit together. They're like, we're not talking about this right now. We need to go. But tensions are high. And then this is when the truth comes out. And Dom essentially attacks Luke, and Luke rejects. And just the acting in this scene, the friendship is so realistic. But the past is so realistic too. That the friend who believes that he didn't do enough, that he would have done more. He calls him a fucking coward and all this, like almost under his breath, but he's been wanting to say it. And once it's kind of out there, he's like, I'll just say it. That stuff is so well done and it's so believable. And man, I know when I love a movie, man, you just sit here and watch me blow the thing the whole time, but I can't help it. I just think it's pretty much perfect. And let's see here. Then you got all the symbols on the trees that surround. And I'm curious on that because you could say, I mean, this is where I start getting into theories and this and that. I feel like this dear God out there, he has the ability to manipulate what you see, right? So, but he needs them to move into a specific area maybe, because there's symbols that are carved into all the trees that surround the house, which they didn't get to see because it was night and it was raining. But was it really raining? You know what I mean? Like, did he forcibly make them seek shelter like that and then present this shelter to them? But I think that the house actually does exist, but their necessity for it might have been, pushed into their minds by him. Maybe it wasn't really raining and they go into the house to get away, and then this is where he can perform what will become the ritual. He goes and he checks the minds of all of them while they're sleeping. Maybe it has to be done while they're sleeping. I don't know. But the fact that they wake up and there's symbols, the symbols have to mean something. And the fact that they're surrounding like all the trees around that house, I don't know. It just seems like that has to have some kind of a purpose. And that's what I could come up with, that they like the first initial ritual performed by him to see who's going to be who, if any of these are worth his time or not. They have to be in that circle of symbols. It's my guess. I don't know. So that was interesting. When I saw the symbols, I was like, that's got to have some meaning to it. And then like when Luke goes up and he sees that there's just trees for days, maybe there isn't. That's another thing. Maybe right past there was the clearing. Maybe 10 feet in front of him, it was a clearing. But there, he made it seem like there wasn't. Like the trees were just going on forever. And I think that's a total possibility. Because should there be trees for days up there when he saw light shining through the trees like that? Like if it was thick trees like that, should the light be shining through like that? I don't think it should be. So it just makes me think that he projected that image to him and he turned around and went back to his friends, and then he even spooks him out by showing the hand on the tree, which is a great moment because you're thinking, oh, it's just a dude. It's just a guy. Like it's some dude. Maybe it's witchcraft, because that's what the guy says when he sees it. He's like, this is witchcraft. Which, you're in that moment. You're like, ooh, is this going to turn into like a witch movie? Cool. I'm down for that. I love witch movies. They don't make enough of them. But then, obviously we see what it becomes, and it's even better, in my opinion. Then they find a wallet out there that's been out there since at least the mid-'80s. But then, once they get to the compound, whatever you want to call this place, there's been people there for much, much, much longer than that. But maybe that's the guy's wallet they find. That's his VW. There you go. That's his van right there. He does have a driver's license in there, and I think everyone that's over at that little compound, they seem to have been there way longer than cars have existed. So he's the only one that has the credentials to have driven that car. And the car is old enough for it to be the 60s, or for the 80s, because that's like a 60s VW bus, I want to say. Cars aren't really my specialty, though, so fuck if I know. I think that's right, though, 60s or 70s. And then they wake up and Hodge is just gone. So Hutch is just gone, and that's just terrifying. And then the reactions of everyone when they find Hutch's body up in the tree and he's been disemboweled and his guts are all hanging out, which is great practical effects, by the way, and a very stark, scary moment. The reactions from all three of them rival the reaction in Hereditary during the car scene. I just think it's chilling. Especially Dom's reaction when he looks up and he finally like has the courage to look up and just starts screaming, and Luke's eyes like kind of just keep looking and not trying, like they're just not trying to accept it. And then like, you know, Dom eventually just gives into it and is just like, oh my God. Like they all three have such genuine reactions to seeing something so horrific. Just so beyond your comprehension. Like this is just stuff your brain's not meant to see. Your friend mutilated like that up in the tree, and knowing that you're probably next. It's just too much for you to process, especially after everything that's happened. And one of them's injured, and oh my God. And let's see. Oh, I also like that they happened to mention, even though I was talking about how they didn't put any blatant exposition, I did like this sort of exposition here a little when I think it's Phil, points out that the body just so happened to be strung up on the path they were walking. And I was like, that's a good point, because I'm not even sure I would have put that together, because you can walk any which way you want in the forest. I mean, you can walk, and it's so big and vast. The fact that it would be on the path they were on is suspect. And maybe after many views, I would have been like, wait a minute, like what are the odds of them coming up on that? And it would be very hard to string them up really quick, disembowel them, and then run away before, you know, if you had a good line of sight of where they were heading. But there's no guarantees they weren't going to change paths on the walk. So the fact that it is on their path, I did like that he pointed that out, because that made me go, oh, so he can kind of direct them in a way, because he would have to know where they were walking. And maybe, yeah, he maybe has the ability to manipulate imagery so that it points them in a certain direction, because they do ultimately lead to that compound, or at least close to it. And where the hell was I on my notes here? I do like that Dom is trying to yell a whole bunch, and Luke keeps telling him to shut the fuck up and keep his voice down. Good stuff there. That was one thing that pissed me off about the Blair Witch. I was like, so you're worried that someone's out to get you in the middle of the woods, which would be very hard to track someone through without being seen, so you'd have to stay a good distance back, and you're going to constantly keep giving away your position by screaming at the top of your lungs? Shut the fuck up. So him constantly like keeping his voice down and then whispering and stuff. I was like, oh, thank you for not constantly yelling. That drives me crazy. And when there's something I would never really even thought of much for some reason, but so Luke gets scared and he goes to run away, and he turns around and he runs into a tree. And I think that some people would find this comedic, maybe, because it's like, oh, funny, he fucking hit his face and fell down, went boom, and it's ridiculous and this and that. But if you're scared as fucking hell, and you know, are in the dark in the woods, and you're like running for your life, running into a tree would be a serious hazard. I never really thought about that. I would just be like, you just run around them. But the trees out there aren't that huge. They're not that thick. They're pretty thin. And You just are running aimlessly in a very dark forest and you're trying to run as fast as you can. You can't see much, visibility is low. Running into a tree, man, would be very, very, like, I would say you probably would. I don't know. I just, when he ran into it, like, I initially wanted to be like, oh, that's kind of funny. But at the same time, I started thinking about it. I'm like, man, it's pretty dark out. Shit, that would be a hazard, wouldn't it? Yikes. I don't know. I just thought I'd bring it up because I thought it was interesting that I'd never really pondered that before. Now, the whole relationship, and I love that it comes down to Luke and Dom, because obviously Dom calls him out and says he's a coward and all this and that, and he's like, you're not my fucking friend anymore. That scene is just gut-wrenching. But then it comes down to them two, which is great. That's the two it should have came down to, because they were the most at odds with each other. And there's that moment where it's a rough scene because he's like, look at me. I'm not gonna leave you. That's a tough moment for both of them. When I was watching that, I was like, wow, this is a really rough moment. Because on one hand, you got the guy who said something so awful to you that you don't even want to be his friend anymore. And now you have to risk your life to save him. So you've got that side of it. But then you've got the other side of it, of the guy who needs to depend on the friend that he just called out. So he's sitting there like, oh my God, like this is the guy I have to depend on now, the guy that I made feel like shit and hates me. Let's just think about that moment, like, wow, this is like, there would be such hesitation on both sides, and both of them's minds would be like racing. But I think that this plays out super well because this is essentially, this movie for me is just all about Luke's recovery and redemption. This is like the most fucked up recovery plan ever. Because, yeah, I mean, I think that Luke, when he gets out of there, he's going to be even more screwed up. But he does ultimately get over what happened. I don't know if he forgives himself, but he triumphs over it. And that's really what the whole ending is about. And that's another huge praise I have for the film, amongst many, many others. Yeah. We've already said all this shit. I jump ahead of my notes sometimes, and when I look back, I'm like, God dang it. And then they go to prepare Dom for the sacrifice, kind of obviously reminiscent of something like King Kong. And as I said, Dom's nightmare ends up essentially being what? And he does. The creature makes himself appear to be this guy's wife. So as I said, he can alter the way you see. But I took that scene initially the first time I saw it because he has a human-like figure on the front of his body that he can make you see what appears to be another human being. I did not think like, oh, maybe he can also make it look like there's trees for miles or direct them in a certain path or whatever. I never really even crossed my mind. I more saw that figure on the front of him could take the appearance of anyone, not because it actually physically changes, but because his eyes have some kind of a, hallucinogenic effect or of some sort that he can control the way you see the form in front of him. But that was the only thing he could manipulate. That's how I saw it the first time, but now having watched it the second time, I think he has the ability to manipulate more than just his immediate being or presence. Love all the hanging bodies in the trees. Love it. Freaking awesome stuff. And then, yeah, we find out that these people get to live beyond their natural life. So they've been out there. I mean, some of them look like they're there from the settlers' days. I mean, they've been there for hundreds of years. And then he goes up in that room. God, I love that room that he goes up into with all the corpses that you think are dead. And then they start like breathing and screaming. That is such a scary ass scene. And just how he casually like lights them on fire, like one by one, like you guys can't even move. Like I'm just burning this bitch to the ground, because that's what he tells his friends. I promise you, I'm gonna fucking burn this place to the ground. And he does, because he promises them he's gonna burn the other place down earlier in the movie. And he does, he burns it all down. Great sequence. I feel like the creature punishes that one girl because she's the one that goes and talks to him. And then, yeah, you have the big showdown. You get to see the thing in its full glory. And he even tempts him. This is where this is like he tempts him with his own guilt. He throws down like the liquor stores, all that stuff. He's like trying to hit him with that last bit of his guilt so that he can worship him. Like that he's trying to tempt him with his guilt so he'll drop to the ground and be like, you're like, please take the pain away. I can't stand it any longer. And he rises up and he overcomes the pain inside, and he lashes back out and he attacks, and he wounds the creature. And the creature then, I guess, he realizes that this guy can't be tamed, that he's let go of this misery inside, that he doesn't need him anymore, and lets him run out. And I do love that Luke doesn't hesitate to kill anybody. Like, he gets that gun, he only has 2 bullets, he grabs that, he punches that old woman in the face, the other guy comes around the corner, he's like messing with the gun, blows that guy away, sees the freaking creature, lines up his shot, takes the shot. He does not, like, that's the best part. He learned from his past mistakes. Didn't freeze for a second, didn't hesitate, nothing. He was, on top of his game this time. I did like that, yeah, as I said, like, they gives them unnatural long life, but their bodies kind of still keep decaying, even if their bodies are able to hold up for a while, longer than normal, they eventually do start to become, wrinkled and old, and to the point where you become skeleton-like. I like that. I'd like to think of those beings out there in the house as being near 1,000 years old or something, and they're just falling apart and they can't even move anymore. And they're just sitting in this altar worshiping him still to this day. And I love when he stands up tall and he becomes this, because the creature design in this is absolutely fantastic. I've never seen anything like it, but I do like that when he stands straight up, he looks like a tree. And that's like how he could blend into the forest or the woods, so that if someone was looking, even if he wasn't manipulating their sight, it would just look like yet another tree standing out there, and you can't see the forest for the trees. There you go. And yeah, I think that's about it. Obviously, huge fan of this film. I can find pretty much nothing wrong for it. So I don't usually give grades, but this one's a 10 out of 10 for me. I have nothing to complain about. I think it's perfect. I really don't have a single complaint about the film. It's one of the greatest fucking films that I've seen of the decade. I think it's fabulous. So there you go. Those are my thoughts. As I said, tomorrow we do the big year-end show, the top 25 of the year, and an awards thing where we're doing best gore and best acting and best all this stuff, sexiest character. That one was done by me. So all right, guys, adios.